Hey everybody, just doing a quick update on my table. I've already sort of showed a little bit about this and what the tiles looked like and what I was planning on doing, but I thought I'd show you the finished product, and for those of you that are also interested in perhaps making a similar table either for this style, for a superhero style game, or even perhaps another one where you have some paper terrain, flooring that you want to use as your game board, I can give you an idea on what you can do with it. I must say that this has exceeded my expectations. It's exactly what I wanted. I was very doubtful as to whether I was going to be able to pull it off because I've never made one of these before, at least without making a test one that I've messed up perhaps beyond what I was willing to use. So these are Fat Dragon terrain pieces. It comes with a building set where you get both the roads and the buildings, so this was fairly inexpensive in this sense. It's on cardstock that I ran through my printer and printed. I used a scrap piece of plywood for this actual wood here. It's a very thin plywood. What I ended up doing is cutting it all down, measuring it all out, and then to apply it, I chose to use a product that I'd never used before. Many of you, it's a very popular product in various circles. Many of you may have used it, but it's called Mod Podge. I had read a little bit where some people feel that it's very similar just to PVA and that it might be a bit of a rip-off, but I'll be quite honest, to get this at Walmart I didn't pay much more than $10 to $12 for a pretty large 16 ounces. That's pretty similar to the price of glue for me, and I've actually had different results with different types of PVA, considerably different results based on the brand. And because of the great results people talked about online about this, I really wanted to just try this where I felt I was going to get a better, I guess more of a sure result, based on other people's experiences rather than trying a particular brand of PVA. And so what I ended up doing is this was just a sort of a pine board, and I first applied the Mod Podge down onto the board, and I did one coat on the board, and then I put one coat on the cardstock, and then I laid it down. I used, people use different rollers and things to try to make sure that there aren't any bubbles. The cardstock's pretty thick, although it can still bubble. What I ended up using, just homemade rather than a board, is I just used, actually comes in a roll of register tape. I actually use these for terrain and for other things. You can tell I use this one because I got a little bit of glue on it, but I use this to roll on the top of it with my hand and just get most of the air bubbles out. I wasn't completely successful. There are some air bubbles in this, but it is really tough with the cardstock and multiple layers of glue, as I'll go on and talk about, and I'm really happy with the result. It really is hard to see unless you're in low light conditions with maybe sort of a natural light coming through the window. You might see some bubbles, but coming down with just a normal lighting, it's hard to see. So like I mentioned, I put the Mod Podge on the board and on the cardstock, and then put it down and I let it dry. I went through this sequentially throughout the whole board, just going from one side to the next. There were some spots where I made some mistakes, where some spaces started to appear, and in those spots I tried to put a little bit of paint in a couple of spots, really small amounts, just to try to cover if somewhere was really white, or the wood color was coming through the board. But for the most part, I think it came out pretty well. When I was satisfied with it and it completely dried, I used 2 coats of Mod Podge on the actual board itself, because it's also a sealant and it dries completely clear. Then when finished with that, I actually used a 400 grade sandpaper, just lightly sanded it, just because there are times where you will see some streaking, and if you use a bristled brush, you'll see probably more. I used a foam brush, but I still saw some streaking. I'll try to show up close what it looks like as far as the to see if I can capture that streaking, but it's really hard, to be honest. Under the bright lighting, you almost have to lower the light conditions to be able to see that. Oh, here we go. You can see it here, that surface right where, at least I can through the viewfinder, where there's some streaking. But to be honest, it's really not bad. It's mostly where there's like some glare where you can actually capture it and see it. This actually is really tough now. It's where the seams are. There was a lot of glue involved, and so they're all up against each other. And I feel really confident that this stuff's not going to peel. I did put one layer of Mod Podge on the sides too, where the paper met. One thing I didn't mention is that there were parts where I had it overlap, and I just used a hobby knife razor to just start at one end and just slowly work my way across and cut it evenly against the wood. In the end, I'm actually really happy with this board. I think actually it'll serve me for a lot of games and different types of building styles and things. And if you have a lot of this stuff already, it's definitely cheaper way to go. If you have to buy everything, like it could be almost as expensive than to just buy a mat. If you're buying the cardstock, the board, the Mod Podge, and the printout, then it could add up very quickly. Because the wood was something I already had, and the cardstock, you know, I was getting that for the buildings anyway, so I was going to have it either way. The main thing for me was the Mod Podge that I bought, and so I really feel I saved quite a bit. And yeah, now I feel I have this general board that can be used for a lot of different sort of urban scenarios with different types of terrain. Hope you guys enjoyed this. If you have any questions, just ask. Take care.